Oh, what's up, guys? Gun here. Welcome to the Intro to MLB DFS series. This is a brainchild of mine in my attempt, my quest, my journey to try and bridge the gap between many of you from the community that play football, NFL, NBA DFS, and just never really have been able to get MLB DFS or understand it or enjoy it. And I'm going to do my best, hopefully, to be an ambassador to probably my favorite fantasy sport, and that's MLB Daily Fantasy Sports on DraftKings, on FANDUEL, Yahoo. We're going to be playing on PrizePicks a lot more this season. So many opportunities out there to continue the daily grind that is the DFS hustle, and I think baseball is pretty underrated and very, very easy to get intimidated by and look at from afar or even within and just be like, man, there's so much variance. This is supposed to happen. This team's supposed to drop 10 and they get shut out. Like, it's very easy to get discouraged. So I'm going to do my best to kind of introduce you guys to the nuances of MLB DFS, to some of my strategies, keep it simple, try to avoid paralysis by analysis, but also try and create a way for you guys to have fun. So in this very first video, the starter video to the series, I'm really just going to highlight and elaborate on some of my favorite talking points of why I like baseball DFS, right? There's going to be a lot of haters on the variance, the Mike Trout can go 0 for complaints, stuff like that. But I'm going to give you a few reasons why I like MLB DFS. And if you listen to these reasons with an open mind and think about these benefits versus particularly basketball, but even NFL to an extent, maybe you'll appreciate a little bit of change. The first talking point I want to bring up is the low stress for news and the fact that you can research with confidence. NBA is more news and minute projection based than skill, really. It really is. You can open up a slate the night before, start doing some research, and much of that research becomes somewhat irrelevant because added value had opened up elsewhere where a high usage marquee guy, a starter, a 34-minute, 30% usage guy, a Paul George, a Kawhi, a Bradley Beal, somebody gets ruled out in the middle of the day, and it really just changes the build. You really don't experience that with baseball. Meaning you can open up a slate the night before. You get off work a Wednesday night, what have you. You can relax a little bit. Maybe find some listening podcasts to accompany you. Maybe you want to play some video games, some Madden, something like that, and just listen to a podcast, kind of get you introduced to the slate. You can do that, and most of that information you heard is going to have a shelf life long enough and strong enough to get you into the game when lock arrives. Now, there are cases where weather happens and starters get back tightness, and maybe the projected lineup's a little bit different, but that doesn't really ruin your research per se, because Mike Trout's backup isn't somebody you are obligated to play, right? LeBron James or Anthony Davis get ruled out, you got to play Kyle Kuzma. Even if a wide receiver 1 gets ruled out, even if it's a lower skilled kind of guy, if he's 3K and he's going to get 80% of snaps and, 5 to 12 targets, who knows? You feel like you take some chances on that. That's not the case with baseball because it's very skill based in terms of hitter versus pitcher. You're not going to replace the production that you are filling in for. So even if a Trout gets ruled out, your research that you did, those stats that you're on, they're still really solid. And if anything, Trout might just make you look twice at the other pitcher. So I love having the ability to almost set it and forget it. Not quite. Early in the morning, the night before, when I make my player pools, carve it out, and I'm just waiting on confirmed lineups, and boom, hit the opto and go. Next talking point, I have this as my comeback to the I don't play MLB DFS because there's too much variance argument. And that's probably the most common argument I hear when people give up on baseball because of the heavy hitters going over, right? The Mike Trouts, the Aaron Judges, the Lindors, all these high-profile names, Bryce Harper walking away with a walk and a couple flyouts to the track. Yes, there's variance, but that variance exists for everyone, and why not embrace that variance? You can win tournaments with zeros in your lineup, not just one, multiple. You can win with multiple zeros in your lineup, and you can definitely cash with multiple zeros in your lineup. And I think that's variance that people complain about, but I think it's a positive. It's a net positive because it allows me to still be emotionally invested into my spend halfway through the night, right? As the slate is staggered throughout the night, I got some West Coast bats left. I'm never truly dead. And in basketball, you're dead. A player gets rolls his ankle on the opening jump ball, you got a zero, guess what? You're toast. A player starts off hot, right? Gets 15 DKP in the first 5 minutes. He was on fire, had a couple steals, pick sixes, and then he rolls his ankle and he's out. Well, that 15 likely just killed any chance you had of winning a tournament and perhaps any chance you had of cashing because of how truly tough NBA DFS is. That's not the case in baseball. Even if you hit a single or a double in your first at-bat and you slip on the bag and you're out of the game, you can still cash, you can still win tournaments. So I say variance is not necessarily a bad thing. It is a thing that exists, but it's something I'd rather embrace than complain about. Though I do concede it can be frustrating when you're on the wrong side of a variance of a Verlander getting blown up or something like that. But it's also a good thing because it keeps you alive much longer, much more often, and I think that's a good thing. I do. Slow developing sweat. Enjoy the moments. In basketball, we get tied up in players' production per minute. We're rooting for rebounds. We're rooting for them to get those fantasy points, get those peripherals. But we don't really we don't get excited until the end of the game, until Jokic hits that triple-double in the fourth quarter, and that's when he's hit value and started exceeding value. You don't feel happy when somebody's on pace for value in the first quarter. That doesn't excite you. But with baseball, not only can you be stoked when one of your guys hits a homer on his first at-bat, because then you know, man, this guy was already a great play. He's got 4 or 5 at-bats left potentially. You also just get to experience that more often. You get to watch your player at-bats more often. You get to understand what happened, the nuances, whether the BABIP was real, whether or not the box score was misleading, because you have time to absorb it and appreciate it. I love MLB TV and just the way baseball staggered. A lot of my stacks, I get to just watch their at-bats or watch my pitchers go inning by inning, and I really get to enjoy it. I don't really get that sense of fulfillment with basketball. I think in NFL there's a case to be made. Yeah, you get to watch more games more often. With basketball, there's so much going on, and at the same time, basketball, you're keeping your head on a swivel for news and late swap adjustments. Lastly, I want to talk about how blowouts don't kill players. Foul trouble, ejections, injuries, they're not as prevalent. So lopsided games can kill game script in NFL, and lopsided games can kill minute projections for basketball and sense of urgency to score. Most of the time, a 10-2 ball game in the 8th inning usually doesn't result in your hitters getting benched. Now, there are times where the stud guy, maybe you get him a couple of innings off his feet and you take him out. But for the most part, these hitters are going to go out there and get their at-bats. And if you're on the right side of a blowout, your matchup potentially gets even better because the opposing team's going to put in more average arms, mop-up duty arms, and it's just a blowout's borderline a good thing for your stack. Whereas in other sports, you'd have to worry about, in football, if your team's up 21, you're probably not throwing the ball to your receiver in the fourth quarter. And in football, or in basketball, if you're up 30 points in the fourth quarter, your guy's probably not on the court. So I do appreciate that. Foul trouble, you don't have to worry about foul trouble. Ejections do happen. You argue balls and strikes. It does happen, but it's not going to be as prevalent on a daily basis. You're not really going to feel that impact on a daily basis. And lastly, injuries do happen, but they're just not as common as football and basketball. Concussion protocols are stealing quarters away from some of our offensive players during NFL DFS, and just sprained ankles and concussions and COVID. All that stuff is occurring daily in NBA as well. So as you can see, like, if you are the type that just finds stress in operating full bore for NBA DFS and even for NFL, I think MLB might be up your alley. It's still going to give you the daily grind, so you kind of get that football experience where you can research early and kind of still be there late. And unlike basketball, like, you can appreciate your research early on and end up where you started more often than you won't. So a couple of talking points I wanted to highlight there. Hopefully these kind of ideas will make you give MLB DFS a chance and be open-minded about playing MLB DFS. And as we continue this series, I'll start guiding you through understanding scoring, understanding basic strategies that I employ when making lineups on the different sites, and some of the advanced metrics that you can use while avoiding paralysis by analysis, but not being in the Stone Age, right? Does that make sense? If this sounds good to you, hit that thumbs up and continue the playlist on this channel. Subscribe to the channel if you appreciate these videos, and of course, keep an eye out for the daily content. Twitter.com/GundackerSports. Let's get it going.